Hi, my name is John Erickson. I am the Communities Manager for the OpenSSL Foundation, and this is my State of the OpenSSL Community for Release 3.5. Now, I know it's been a few months. I'm fairly new to the job, so I've been spending the last couple of months trying to figure out what the community is like, trying to get my arms around it, and so I'm just sharing some of my thoughts based on what I've learned so far. And I'm hoping to do something similar for 3.6 and future releases, so that we can all be on the same page about what is the OpenSSL community and where is it headed and what's changed and what are its um, challenges and what are its wins. So, if you're watching this, you probably already know that OpenSSL is a software library for cryptography and for secure communication. It implements the TLS protocol, also called the SSL protocol, and it's been around since the mid 90s. The code base, the project has been around since 98. And this is a graph showing how many people have contributed over the years. This is a number of authors per month. And so you can see that for most of the 2000s, it was very low. Less than 10 people a month were contributing. And of course, that 10 was probably the same small group. It's actually a much smaller, probably more like five people who are very active at that time. And then something happened in 2014. Again, if you're watching this, you probably already know what happened in 2014. But to spell it out, that was when the Heartbleed vulnerability showed up, was discovered, and that sparked a lot of interest. And that interest mostly was like, wow, we've got this very, very important piece of software that's being maintained by a very, very small team. And that's not great. We need to make sure that there's enough people there to handle all of the changes that are necessary for OpenSSL to continue to be a part of securing the internet. And so you can see after 2014, there was a big spike, and they took care of that problem, that vulnerability, and then there's been a slow, steady increase, which is something that I'm looking at as a community manager. Not necessarily because I want more engagement, but because growth is the sign of a healthy community. And certainly, I think there's uh, more things that need to be done on OpenSSL to continue making it relevant and important and doing what it's supposed to be doing. So, how do we communicate? Going back to the 90s, there are limited number of ways, and one of the best ways to communicate over the internet was mailing lists. And so here you go. Here, the mailing lists have been around for decades. The top one is the announcement list. It's very low volume. It's 3.5 is coming out. We will announce 3.6, and so there's some people who are interested in those um, announcements, and so they've subscribed to that list. OpenSSL users at the bottom. That's more active. It's about talking about how you use OpenSSL, asking questions, that sort of thing. And so you can see the community has been there. Um, Not so much recently, as we will talk about in a minute. OpenSSL project, that's where people can talk about the project itself. That doesn't happen there very much anymore. There's another place, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then I want to make a special mention of OpenSSL commits. If you sign up for that, and I have, you get an email every time something is committed to the OpenSSL codebase, and that can be a lot. As you can see, there's a lot of commits that come through every month, and so I personally have filtered it so it doesn't go into my inbox. Just sort of kind of a fun thing to see every now and then, to open that up and see what's been added lately. An easier way to do that, honestly, though, is GitHub. OpenSSL has been on GitHub for about 15 years, and one of the things that GitHub offers is features like pull requests, and that's a more structured way of accepting changes. So I've done a couple of pull requests. I will clone the repository. I'll make my changes. I'll submit my changes as a pull request, and then they'll get reviewed. Um, and then the other thing is issues, and issues are similar to what the OpenSSL users list is for, but a little bit more, ideally focused on problems that people see in the software, things that the software can correct or address. But you still would get questions and people not quite understanding how things were going. And you'll notice that that actually didn't start in 2014. It's actually lagging a little bit as more and more people became involved in OpenSSL. There's more issues and more pull requests that came later. Um, Issues in particular have been dropping off for the last year and a half or so, and there's a good reason for that. We've started moving some of those to GitHub discussions. GitHub discussions is a better place for questions. There's a feature where you can ask a question and see answers. You can have general discussion. There's another announcements mechanism there. And so we're doing more and more with GitHub discussions. Every day we get a bunch of discussions that come in and people are answering, and it's a very active part of the OpenSSL community. And I encourage you to participate. If you have questions or concerns or comments, that's an excellent place to come and talk. We're very open to hearing from anybody, honestly. So, who is OpenSSL? Who are the people that actually make the whole thing work? And one answer is the committers. And these are 19 people who have control over what goes into the code. So when I submit my PR, I said there's some review. 2 committers reviewed my PRs. It could be more, but it must be at least 2. And if that happens and there's no other problems, then it goes into the code. So these people obviously need to know a lot about OpenSSL. They are one of the lines of defense against the next Heartbleed. They need to look at it and make sure there isn't anything that is, a bug that might not be malicious, or even worse, a malicious attempt to corrupt the code or put in a backdoor or anything like that. And thankfully, we have very knowledgeable people who know the code inside out, have a good understanding of cryptography, have a very good understanding of secure communication, especially the SSL or TLS protocol. Now you notice that some of the people here are employed by either the OpenSSL Foundation, which is focused on non-commercial activities, or the OpenSSL Corporation, which is a for-profit entity that focuses on commercial, has a commercial focus. So there are people who are paid full-time staff. They look at PRs as part of their job. They're creating their own code, that sort of thing. But actually, more than half are not being paid. They're not part of, they're not being paid by OpenSSL. I'm sure they have regular jobs. In fact, some companies donate the time of their employees to OpenSSL, which is very, very valuable for us because we get great developers who are contributing code, who are reviewing code, who are helping us make decisions, and we're very, very grateful for that. And then other people are just doing it from their own volition. They have some interest in it. Maybe it's professional. Maybe it's just because it's their hobby, something that they're really interested in doing or learning more about. But these folks have been vetted. They know, like I said, they know the code inside and out. So we're very grateful for them. Now, it's been about a year, and we started focusing on getting feedback from individual communities. And what do I mean by communities? Well, there are all sorts of people who use OpenSSL. They have all sorts of different interests, and it can be confusing if you get all these different ideas. Do this, do that, and the other thing. And so we have set up a mechanism to get a little bit more controlled feedback. And you can sort of see there are 6 different communities. We've just divided this up. It could be a different list. Who knows? But these are the ones that we have now. The top is distributions. This is normally people who are packaging OpenSSL up to put in an operating system, normally Linux. Academics are people who have sort of a research orientation. They want to understand more about cryptography from a research point of view, maybe looking ahead at things like quantum computing and how that will impact cryptography. Small businesses, they're using OpenSSL for their products and services. Obviously, they have a more practical point of view. They need OpenSSL to work, and they need it to work in specific ways. And then we've separated the large businesses. The number, it's between 0 or 1 and 100 is small business, and more than 100 is large business. And the main reason for that is large and small businesses have different focuses. They have different needs. They have different requirements. Just sort of a little bit arbitrary, but you do need to make sure that you're getting input from all directions. And then our largest group is actually the individuals, people who are not necessarily connected to some other organization, and so they're just interested on their own. And then we have committers. That's another group that we're trying to get input from. Obviously we know them really well, but they're a useful voice. So how do we actually get that advice to the OpenSSL Foundation and Corporation? Well, the first thing is we have business advisory committees. Each of these communities have elected a person from among their group to represent them in business advisory committees. And so we get the viewpoint of each of those distributions, academics, small business, and so on. And it's divided between the foundation and the corporation. Foundation, corporation. And the reason for that is the foundation has a non-commercial focus, and that can be different from the commercial focus of the corporation. And we don't want to prioritize one or the other. They're held in tension. So if there's a conflict, we need to come up with some sort of joint agreement about it. And so the foundation committee advises the foundation from the point of view of someone who is looking at it from a non-commercial point of view. And the corporation has their own business advisory committee. And these are the goal of this committee is to sort of to help us inform us about the what of what OpenSSL is doing. So what should we put into 3.6? What sort of features are important? What sort of priorities are important? What should we make sure happens, or what should we make sure does not happen? Now, we also have a technical advisory committee for both the foundation and the corporation. And this is very, very new. We're just now starting to meet for these groups. And their focus is, again, on the commercial, non-commercial break. But as opposed to compared to the business advisory committee, the technical advisory committees are focused a little bit more on the technical side, not necessarily how to make OpenSSL, the OpenSSL library work, although they might have some advice there, but more how it's used, how it would be put into, it's a library, so it's used by other applications and other software. And so that's more of the focus of this group. All right, I'm going to take a moment to plug the OpenSSL conference. You can see opensslconference.org to find out all the details. It's in Prague in October of this year. I'm going to be there, so if you are there, be sure to come and say hi. And we're looking for speakers right now, so if you have an interest in talking about OpenSSL or cryptography or secure communication, I think you should submit your talk, and you can find more information on that website. We have LinkedIn accounts. They don't have a lot of followers, but you can see both the corporation and the foundation have about 1,000, and the conference is a little bit less. We send out announcements here too, so if you are a LinkedIn user, I highly encourage you to follow us, and that will be a convenient way of getting some updates and showing your interest. Now, outside of our control, there are a lot of people talking about OpenSSL, and a big place where that happens is in the Stack Exchange communities, in particular Stack Overflow. And I went through and I found all of the individual communities that talk about OpenSSL. They have a tag for OpenSSL questions. And you can see there are 16 communities where this is part of the topic of conversation. So there's webmasters, there's Bitcoin, there's code review, there's a cryptography stack exchange, and then of course there's Unix and Linux, and another one for Ubuntu, and then of course the big one is Stack Overflow, where people who are using OpenSSL in their code ask questions. How many questions? Well, a lot. A lot of people have asked questions about OpenSSL, and there are 8,135 answers as of the time I took grabbed the information. Individual people have answered a question with at least one upvote on Stack Overflow, which is a lot of people, and we don't necessarily know who they are. These are potentially people who are not going to come to GitHub. They're not going to participate in our mailing lists. They're not going to follow us on LinkedIn, any of those things. And so they're just sort of like, they're out there. We know they're out there. All these people are asking questions about OpenSSL, but we don't necessarily reach them directly. And so if they're struggling with things, obviously we can read the questions and we can say, oh yeah, we should fix that. But they're not giving us the input directly. They're using OpenSSL. We're very grateful for that, but we'd love to find a way to get some of that feedback so that we can respond to what people are actually doing with the software. Now, OpenSSL is everywhere. Here's some screenshots. The one on the far side, this is my oven has an app on my phone, and so you can see that. And then the next one down, that's the actual, I go into the range. I can actually send it. If I grab out my phone right now, I can say, start baking. Nothing in the oven right now, but this is, you can see how this would be convenient. If I were away and I was like, oh, I want my bread to start baking so that it'll be done when I get home, that's available. And I dig a little bit deeper, and there's something called open source licenses. I was like, what is that? Well, it turns out open source license lists all of the open source projects that Samsung, which is the company that makes my range, is using in this hardware, in this this product that they're selling. And they've got OpenSSL as the top thing on their list, which is sort of comforting to know that some stranger is going to have a much harder time breaking into my oven and sending it a bake command or a broil command, which might be hurt cost me a lot of money or potentially burn down my house. Who knows? So we know that OpenSSL is all sorts of places, and we have a hard time reaching those folks. Whoever wrote this app on Samsung used OpenSSL in some way. Maybe they used another library that uses OpenSSL. I don't know. But we don't actually, we don't have any feedback from them. It's are they part of the community? Not really, but we'd like them to, we'd really like more of those people to become part of it. Here's another thing. If you're a Mac user, you don't have OpenSSL by default. It's an unusual operating system in that sense. It has an OpenSSL fork, which is fantastic. We're glad that they have used that code. That's the whole point of open source projects. But if you need the actual OpenSSL library because you're building some other piece of code, or you're developing some other piece of code and you want to use the actual OpenSSL library, you have to download it. And so there's this system called Homebrew. It's also an open source project. And the number one thing for the last year, and pretty much all time, is OpenSSL. There have been over 5 million people, or 5 million downloads. Obviously, some of them might be automated, that have downloaded OpenSSL in the last 365 days. So how are we trying to reach those people? Well, this is where you can come in. We have a survey. You can, hopefully you can scan this QR code. My image is kind of in the way, but I think you can do it. Let me see if I can do it. And And you can take the survey and you can tell us how you use OpenSSL. And it works. So good. It's not a long survey. It's just one page. It's very minimal information, but we'd love to hear your story about how you use OpenSSL in whatever application you're using it in. So that's my presentation. That's the state of the OpenSSL community for release 3.5. The next one, I hope to talk to you sometime after October when we have 3.6. And whatever the community is like then should be about the same, just a little bit more growth. So thank you for listening.